my sweet friends, welcome back. And if you are new, welcome. I'm Ginny and I like to glue little pieces of paper to other little pieces of paper. And I love to share my projects with you. So I hope that you will enjoy this one. If you missed last week, I was at the lake, and so I didn't get to come in with a project, but I think this will be so perfect for your summer holidays, and I hope that you did enjoy your holiday last week. It was a little bit chilly at the lake, but we did have a good time anyway. So this is just going to be a real easy to make folio created with single-sided paper, and we're going to get so many pockets in here and large size pages. This is a very easy and fast folio to make and pretty versatile for just about any occasion. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. So for today's project, I did just decide to pull one of the papers from my stash. This is going to be 12 by 12 and it is a single-sided paper. And so I am going to demonstrate with this, but then we'll move into the pattern paper. This requires a little bit of gluing and I hate to ask you guys to wait while the glue dries. So I think this is a good way to keep the flow of our video going. And so obviously you would pick the pattern that would best go with the project that you want to make, and for us that is going to be summer holiday. And so the first thing I want to do is cut this to be 8 inches high, right? Because we do want to leave some space for that pocket, but we're going to leave the full width of 12 inches. So let's just move this down and cut that right off at 8. And so when you're working on your project, obviously you would cut all these pieces at the same time, and that really helps it to go by much faster. You do want to reserve this portion that you just cut off. This is going to be what we use to cover those pockets. And so the next thing you want to do is bring in your scoreboard. And I want to score this in half for the width that is the full 12 inches. And so I'm going to go right in at 6. Remember, with your single-sided papers, you just want to make a couple of quick passes that are a little bit lighter so that you don't accidentally push through that thinner paper. Okay, now you got that. You want to turn it over. So now we have the short side at the top, and we'll score it at 6 again. And this is going to give us a 6 by 6 page with a 2-inch pocket. And so that is a pretty generous area for you to add all of those inserts that you want to add. So we're done with both of those cutting and scoring tools. Let's go ahead and just start folding. And so go ahead and put your first full fold in here, and then turn it so that you can also fold up your pocket. I don't know how long this paper has been in my stash, but it has been a while, so I'm glad to be getting some use out of it, even if it's just for the purpose of demonstrating some measurements and scoring. Now, you do want to remove just a little bit of this portion here where it's scored at the pocket, because you want to reduce some of the bulk that would wind up in that corner. And so I'm just going to fold it back on itself. And then I'll cut off a real small strip here so that it kind of comes in at an angle. If you fold it in half, you're going to get it cut evenly on both sides. And you only want to go up to where those score lines would intersect. You see, so that's just a real small amount that I took off. And when you open it, you can see there will be a little bit of a gap, and that is what you want. So when you fold this up, this is not going to create a lot of bulk here in this fold. And so you do want to have your full page of the pattern showing in the back. And then when you fold this up, we're going to take the remainder of the paper that we cut off and cover the fronts of these pockets. And so for the project today, I did choose 3 different patterns. And then once I got to the pocket portion, I just mixed and matched so that it would be a definite layering pattern and I could get use out of what would otherwise be off cut. So I'm just going to come in with some double-sided adhesive here and lay in that around the border for each side and then we'll go ahead and add that pattern and cut it off. While we're doing this though, I did want to update you quickly on that trip that I mentioned to go to Hobby Lobby. And so we don't get to go often, and I think I build it up in my head to be much more than it could ever live up to be. Now, if you guys are going to Hobby Lobby and you're getting all the stuff you want and you're finding everything, please don't come for me. I just looked at a few things there and I was a little disappointed, you have to say. The tech hubby and I were looking for a piece of stretched canvas art and we did not agree on one, so we kind of left that project to be worked on later. I did get a couple of things of wax melts. I think their wax melts are always really nice, but my main purpose to go there was to pick up some papers for our Christmas in July series. And so previously when I had gone, they would have a full aisle of paper, and then so one side would be the single-sided papers, the metallics, the glitter paper, the specialty papers, and then on the other side would be paper pads and also cardstock. And so that would have normally run the whole length. And for this visit, I definitely did not notice a difference in the single-sided paper side, but for the paper pads, it only went down maybe about 65%. And so they put something else at the end of that aisle. And so I was a little bit disappointed because it definitely made it so that there could be less variety out. I found a couple of things to add to our Christmas in July series, but really not exactly what I was hoping for. But like I said, if you're still going and you're loving the Hobby Lobby, then, you know, I'm glad that you're having a more positive experience, because I was definitely disappointed. So I'm going to take the tape off of one side only here, just to keep it from being unmanageable. And I think if you adhere one side and then process the other, it will make it much easier so that you don't create any kind of tension where your score lines intersect. So I'll just come in here and lay that extra pattern right in the corner. I hope you can still see it even though I'm using the same pattern, but I just want to make sure to keep that straight and even. That way it'll be covering that whole pocket. And then so I would come in and just remove that excess, and I do find it a little bit easier to use a larger scissor, so I'm just gonna go ahead and clip down that very carefully. And then go ahead and open that set of pages up and clip down the side as well. And so you would repeat that process for the other side. You see that will come right off. So you would do that for this side as well. Then the next step, or the last step I should say, is we're going to come in here and glue this pocket. So I'm just going to put a little bit of my Tombow here and a little bit of Tombow here. Then I'll fold that up and give it pressure while the glue sets up so that I got a good contact. And then when I have both sides of that done, then this will be one of the sections for our book. I'm going to put 3 in our book for today, but you could easily add a couple more if you wanted to. And like I said, this is very versatile. Any holiday, any theme would work well, and you don't have to stick to single-sided paper. You could easily just use a pattern that you like, and if you folded it up and liked the contrast on the B side, then you would not have to cover the pockets. But that would just be another way that you could adapt this to what you have on hand. So when you get done with both of those pockets, I did reserve what would be left of the strip to use for layering on the front cover. And I'm just going to show you how these separate sections worked out for me. So you see I'm switching out those patterns, kind of mix and match them, and then I'll have a total of 3 for this book. And how I want to arrange this is so that it will be an accordion style. So one side will fold this way, then this one will fold this way, and then the next one would fold out that way. And so I have just put my adhesive on the one that I want for the center section here, you see, and I'm only removing the tape one side at a time because you definitely do not want to accidentally adhere this to a section, because it's very, very difficult to get adhesive off of single-sided paper without ripping it. So I'll just bring these corners together. Now remember that we want it to have the center section opening this way. So let's just switch that around before we get ahead of ourselves. And I'll bring these corners together. Maybe it will be easier if I got a flat surface. And should everything line up, because it's all cut to be 6 by 6. And so I am also going to recommend this, that I would not want to put some wet adhesive in here because it really will kind of buckle that paper. So I would just go ahead and be happy with my double-sided tape. You can even come in and burnish it with your score tool to make sure that you've got a good contact. I would also recommend, you see how there's just a little bit of white showing at the top, the back of that other pattern. You can easily just clip that off and make sure that everything lines up properly. So as I mentioned, I did have my adhesive on this side as well. So let's just go ahead and add the third section. This is really festive paper. I think it is so, so cute. I think this is the only holiday where I don't find a non-traditional color palette works for me. I really do want to stick with the red, white, and blue, even though I don't conform to that rule for the other holidays. But for me, this just works out. Now, you see we have it to open this way and then this way, and then it will also open in the back. So that's kind of your accordion thing. I'm just going to, real quickly off camera, cut that top edge off so I make sure that it's nice and even. Okay, now that looks good, and I do want to have a sturdy cover for this. And so I am going to get into my 65-pound cardstock for this. I did cut this piece to be 6 high by 12 wide, scored it at 6, and then I'm just going to add my 2 glue combo here. And I just think it makes it nicer to have that extra double layer of thickness so that your cover will maintain a nice shape. And then also you can arrange it so that the scored side would be where you would most notice it, and just makes it look a little bit nicer. So let's just go ahead and do that. And I'll just fold that right on over there. So we've got that extra double layer. I have this one finished, so let's just add this as we're working along. And here's my folded side, so I want that to be where it would open on the right. And just line that up as I go along. Prepare one for the back as well. And just add that cardstock layer here. Okay, so everything is adhered in place, and this would be a good time to just go ahead and finish that back flap. I just had some paper from my stash that I thought went really well with it, so I'm just going to pull that out here and add it. I cut this to be 6 by 6 because the inside doesn't have borders, so I thought it would be okay if the outside didn't have a border. But I did keep that off cut. Remember, I said as I was working along that I had a 2-inch strip left over, and so let's just go ahead and add that for layering. Any little bit of extra detail you can get will be good. And since this one was already cut, I figured we might as well use it. So that's going to be the back. And remember, we do want to close this up. So let's put a little trim on there. This is optional. I think if you are more comfortable with a more sweet and simple style of cover and layering, then you definitely could do that just by adding some additional pattern paper to the cover and maybe one of the cutter parts or an image from a printable. And you definitely don't have to add all of these layers, but I like the more finished look of these, all the embellishments and trim. So that's what I'm going to add. But like I said, you definitely will be able to quit whenever you decide it has enough detail. So let's just put this on. It's a beautiful stitched satin that coordinates so well. And just like on the back, we'll put this blue pattern. This is a Cartabella pattern, just from an old collection, and for whatever reason this one didn't get used, but I think it works really well with our project today. And so just like we did for the back, let's add that second layering piece. I did have a nice selection of cutter parts from my stash, and so I'm just going to use that to decorate the cover. I put a more rectangle shaped die cut here as a background, and that helps to kind of fill in and give it some more detail, and the white helps to pop that off of the background. And so I did have a nice variety of these patriotic sort of cutter parts from my time when I worked for Authentic Paper. And so this was part of one of their collections. And I think that kind of retro pinup girl with the Americana hat, and that works really well. Now, I did have to trim her down a little bit for the purpose of getting her to fit, but I will cover this area with our flowers so that it doesn't look, you know, like we had to cut it off too soon. But you see how we can cover that and it will disguise that cut edge. So I took a combination of chrysanthemums and magnolia flowers here, added die cut foliage, netting, loopy twine bows, and then more of that pretty satin that's stitched here. And this will really help to anchor that bottom portion. I'm just going to add that with hot glue so that it will be well secured. As I mentioned, I do have more cutter parts. Now remember, we're going to have 6 pockets inside, so that is quite nice. And so we have enough of these cutter parts here that I can include 2 for each pocket. I will also mention that if it makes sense for the layout that you're creating to not have a pocket, but just put a bigger picture, you could easily just cover that, because this is just that single-sided paper, remember, so it's not terribly thick. So you could use this as a full page with just a layering pattern underneath. And if you're anything like me, you've got a whole pack of leftover stickers from previous collections. So if you're making this as like a journal, a travel or notebook style journal, well, you're adding all your details over and under the pictures, you could definitely build up some fun layers there. But for this purpose, I'm just going to put like a couple in each one so that we have plenty of room for all of that pictures and the journaling that we want to add. If you want to adhere these to a neutral background, I think that would also be a great way to have room for your journaling. Just going to kind of mix and match that as I go along. And then you've got 2 for the back. So that's a total of 12 of those inserts. I think that is great. You have, like I mentioned, quite a few more of those from Authentic, various other brands that are just leftovers from collections. Some even like 4x6, or you know, the 4x6 ones would also work pretty well in there because we didn't lose any room for the bottom of our pocket. And so some of them did come from like paper pads, just cut aparts. And then if you wanted to, you could even use a printable, like one from my shop, that would work well too. Now I do have some thoughts on other ways that we could finish this off with a couple of different variations. And so I do plan to do that. I think one of our projects for Christmas in July, because as I was working along, I thought to myself, we could really do some other fun interactive kind of things for these pages. And so I'm looking forward to that. But see how nicely that ties up there. It's really sturdy with all of those paper layers and the extra thick covers. So let's just go ahead and finish it off with whatever favorite finishing details that you like. So for me, that is always going to be charms and a button. I'll add those with hot glue. And then last but not least, let's just drop a couple sequins in here. That will help to balance that side. And I'll add these with my Tombow as I always do. And that way they will be very well secured. Some of these are not shaped very well. And so I'm just picking ones that are definitely going to be flat against the background. That's better. So that's going to be it for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and you can see how versatile it would be if we wanted to do any other holiday or theme. Would just be as simple as switching out the collection or papers that we use. And I also think that we have opportunities to do some other fun finishing details. So we'll look forward to that. Make sure that you check in the description for links. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.